Hi, Rob.
Yeah, wanted to thank Brenda and Jeff for allowing me to participate in these meetings. I've learned a lot and gives me a great perspective on the industry. And yeah, it's my honor to introduce Carolyn Coquillette. She is founder and CEO of Shop-Ware. She also is owner of Luscious Garage Hybrid Specialty Shop in San Francisco. Among other things, she also is a chair on the ASCCA. So yeah, without further ado, here is Carolyn, my boss.
Thanks, Rob.
No problem.
Let me go ahead and share my screen. So y'all tell me if you can see this okay. How does that look? And I'm going to click present here. And then.
Coming up clear on my side, Carolyn.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Great. So we've put together a lunch and learn for you. Shop-Ware is a proud allied member of ASA Northwest, have been for some time. I pulled out an old photo of me at the ATE Expo back in the day with my good friend Chip Keene, longtime participant ASA Northwest. So great to be back with you guys. It's an honor to be asked to present. Brenda had reached out and said, what do you got that's new, what's fresh? And we thought we'd put something together specifically on how to improve your service writing. And today's topic is going to be a popular one, which is how you present your diagnostics, how you get paid for diagnostics. And we're going to touch specifically on advanced driver assistance systems, ADAS, which are a very popular topic. So lots of candy in here for you today. Sit back, relax, enjoy your lunch. And Brenda has said that she will interrupt me or raise her hand if there are questions. I absolutely welcome them. Let me get the participant screen up so I can actually see. Oh, there they are. It's behind this window. Just a minute. So I can see if a hand is raised. Do not hesitate to ask questions. When you're doing these, as you know, as great as it is to get together in any kind of way, getting together on these Zooms is a particular exercise in talking to the void. It's like being on radio and hoping there's somebody out there listening to you. So if you want to engage, have a question, have anything you want to add, do not hesitate to raise your hand and participate. It's great for me and it's great for everybody else on the call. So thank you very much for being here. So a bit about me, in case you don't know me, I started in the auto industry through the service bay. I started wrenching in 2001 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This is me back in the day, about 30 pounds lighter, and my old late 90s, early 2000s blonde hair streaks rocking at Weaver's Marathon with my buddy Dave Palnow. I ended up moving out to San Francisco in pursuit of hybrid cars. There weren't as many hybrid cars in Ann Arbor as there were in the West Coast at that time. So I was seeking those cars out and ended up opening my own hybrid specialty shop in 2007. And that's me also a lot thinner than I am today, with a lot longer hair than I have today. And that's two of the first early customers that we had. So the old Insight, and of course, our good friend, the Gen 2 Prius. Doing a lot of taxi cabs, and happy to answer more questions about hybrids if people are particularly interested in that. I founded Shop-Ware, shop management software, in 2013, and I am its current CEO, and I am proud to be here with you today. My passion is bridging the divide between high-tech cars and the driving public, and that's been a theme throughout my career. So back in 2007, when I opened my repair shop, the Prius was the poster child for a high-tech car, right? That's why they were so popular in San Francisco. San Francisco kind of being ground zero for people who think they're high tech. Of course, we know really everybody in Seattle, right? But San Francisco definitely trying to hit that trend. And one of the things that was very apparent to me was the fact that while the Prius was a very complicated car, it's a very sterile driving experience. And we're going to talk about that some more, which is to say that the driver of the car doesn't necessarily get to participate in the sophistication under the hood anymore. And so one of the things that was critical to me in terms of forming our value proposition was to pull back that curtain and really allow the customer to experience the complication and our technical expertise to fix that car. And we did that originally with a cloud-based custom shop management system that we ran. And then ultimately I decided to go and make that shop management system available to the industry at large. So this is obviously the path to Shop-Ware. And in all cases, this is about really trying to enable shops to better connect the work that they do on high-tech cars with their customers, the driving public. So this is kind of my bread and butter, and of course what we're going to be touching on today. So today's topic is documenting diagnostic work. By way of agenda, we are going to start by answering, what does a vehicle owner experience and therefore understand? So what is the vehicle owner's sensory understanding? What's the interior design? What's underneath the hood? These are things that oftentimes we take for granted because we're typically coming from a technical perspective and not necessarily the driver's seat. Secondly, we're going to talk about what are you asking your customer to pay for. So when you read the repair order, you need to be reading your repair order from the customer's perspective, because ultimately that's what you're selling to them, is what they are reading on that page. And then lastly, how do you communicate technical sophistication? So how do you present yourself in a professional manner so that customers understand and see value, and also so third parties can understand and authorize work? So we'll touch on both of those too. So to kick it off, what does the owner experience? So obviously we see what is happening with the trends on cars. We see how the car is trying to emulate the experience that customers have with their favorite toy, their smartphone. And you see this merging of sort of what's the experience using a smartphone and what's the experience using a car. Great example of that would be the Tesla, with sort of this massive screen birthing out of the dashboard. Of course, this makes the car seem very fancy and presumably delightful to own and drive. But the reckoning comes when the car needs something, when the car breaks or needs maintenance or whatever, and you are certainly, as the driver, not going to be capable of servicing that vehicle yourself. You are going to need a service professional to do that. So that's the oh shit moment for people, which is like, okay, I bought this really complicated car. Now what do I do with it? And what's amazing, if we look at sort of the trends in the sort of reckoning component, which is how does the car communicate it has a problem? Even this photo that I'm showing here is kind of out of date, right? But when we think about it, says service engine soon or check engine, if someone actually decides to check the engine, this is what they get, right? As if the hood wasn't sufficiently protective of the owner of the car. We have to then layer the entire engine compartment with plastic so that there's like a second hood underneath. All of which is basically to tell the customer that it's not them who's going to be doing any of that checking, right? So this is the vehicle owner's experience. And when you take a step back, of course, we live this, we laugh about this. Just take a step back and think about how profoundly ridiculous this is. I mean, this is insane. And this is the world that we have to essentially live in and address, because we have to meet our customers in this absurdity and help them understand what they actually need to do about it. One of the ways that I love to sort of explain this in another way, or a more simplified way, is with this graph. If you've seen me do this presentation before, you've seen this. So this is my favorite. Over here on the left-hand side, we have onboard computers, and the x-axis is time. So onboard computers is a function of time. And if we look back in 1990, there was like one onboard computer. And that's true of the owner of the car, right? So we're not talking about the car itself, we're talking about the person behind the wheel, and they had one onboard computer, right? The one on their shoulders back in 1990. And fast forward to today, that owner of the car still has only one onboard computer, the one on top of their shoulders, even though it's highly distracted by the second computer that they have in their pocket. But the car, the human hasn't gotten any more sophisticated. However, the car has gotten tons more sophisticated, right? The car has, tens, if not 100 onboard computers these days. And so we acknowledge that there's this huge disconnect between vehicle owners and the things that they're driving. What's interesting about that is that this is why we are here. This is why we exist as an industry, is to bridge the gap between these two parties And note that when things go wrong, when the car needs something, it's not when it's coming off the assembly line. It's typically not when it's under warranty. It's when it's left the dealership and it's in the aftermarket, it's coming into our service bay. So we are those people who are responsible for essentially helping these two estranged parties get back together again. This is why we exist. This is our opportunity. So as we look at service writing, and as we look at how we are presenting information to the customer, the question always is, are you helping these 2 points get closer together or aren't you? Because our job is to essentially help these 2 points get closer together and understand each other. So now, second piece, what are you asking the customer to pay for? So getting into service writing. So this is typical, and this is what I like to start with because this is the thing that we need to start training ourselves to stop doing. So very common is a service called MWL, which we know means master warning light. Underneath the code for the service, we have the customer states notes. Customer states that MWL is on, pulled codes, tested oxygen sensor, found bad, replaced oxygen sensor, cleared codes. So this is your classic concern, cause, correction, all in one service. And the customer is being charged $855 for this guy. So a couple things about this. First of all, the customer doesn't know what MWL means. We do. And the reason why we've named it MWL is presumably because our shop management system requires us to type in like a code or something to pull it up. So if it's MWL, it makes it easier for us to go and grab. That's not the customer's problem. So just because your shop management system works that way doesn't mean you should be putting that in front of your customer. Additionally, we have now batched the customer's problem with the diagnostic that we performed, as well as the ultimate fix. This is all mixed together into one soup here. So it's very hard for the customer to parse all that was done. And additionally, this thing, which is MWL, is now costing $855. So presumably they're getting charged $855 because the master warning light was on, which is actually not what the customer is being charged for at all, right? They're getting charged for a diagnostic, and we'll talk about that in a second, as well as an oxygen sensor replacement. So this is where you start to read these things and you start to say, am I actually helping these 2 points on the graph get closer together, or is this still just as confusing? Is this as bad as the plastic cover over the top of the engine? So here is an alternative approach. So what you see here at the top is the diagnostic service presented separately from the repair. And this diagnostic service does not have the customer states notes in it. So instead it is called warning light on, first hour of testing. We'll talk some more about different language and vocabulary and kind of what you may or may not want to present to your customer in your own style. I don't necessarily say there's one way that's the right way. All that matters is that what you are doing to the car is what is communicated here. So we are doing a diagnosis, and then within that, we see the descriptions with specifics of what this diagnostic work is going to entail. So we are going to pull DTCs. You'll note that while it does have an acronym, that description is called out in plain English, so the customer can read diagnostic trouble codes, not just DTCs, document the information, reference any TSPs, and then obviously advise on course of action. Now you might wonder, okay, how did we arrive at oxygen sensor? That would be presented separately. So we'll see some like kind of more detail on how you put this all together here in a second. But for the purposes of charging the customer, what you're charging the customer for here is the diagnostic. And then the benefit of calling that out separately is that you get to charge for it, which in this case is $150. Secondly, we have remove and replace oxygen sensor. Now, this is not a webinar on how to write service for repairs. We're focusing on diagnostics, so I'm not going to talk more about this. But essentially, you see what is the repair that was performed, not the symptom of the repair. And then presumably because it's an $855 job, which includes a pretty significant amount of labor, why is there so much labor? Well, it's because I had to remove the engine subframe in addition to replacing the oxygen sensor, hence the higher price. So first of all, the customer can read this. Second of all, the customer can see that they are paying for a diagnosis and you're getting paid for it as well. and they understand what was actually done. So what they are paying for here is a diagnostic and for a repair. They are not getting charged for a symptom or a complaint. So this is the comparison between these two. Another point to consider when you're thinking about how to frame this stuff up is that when you are charging the customer for their complaints, they are essentially getting penalized for complaining to you, right? If you tell me something is wrong, I'm going to charge you money. That's backwards, right? I am here to help you. So the customer should not feel penalized by telling you anything. In fact, you should encourage them to want to tell you everything that's broken with their car so you can go and fix it, right? So what you need to do is separate what the customer is saying to you about what they need from what you are doing on the actual car, which is the diagnostic and the repair. And then you're charging for the diagnostic and repair. In other words, you're charging for your help. You're charging for your service. You're not charging for the customer's needs. So this is how you communicate technical sophistication. This allows you to showcase to the customer not only what you did, but that what you did was sophisticated, right? It had multiple things that were involved in it. In this case, this is a pretty basic, this is like a generic diagnostic, just a warning light on. I'll go into some more specific details, but even with something generic, we can see what technical details did this thing include, as well as the repair that you performed, of course. Okay, so this is system-specific testing. So we're going to take you through kind of some more advanced examples, ending, of course, with the ADAS examples, which are super exciting. So here is an example of a service that both includes labor lines and inspections. So this is a checklist combined with some labor operations. And this is for a 12-volt battery system test. Now, again, here we are charging for testing. We are not charging for, customer had a problem. And over here on the right-hand side, you get to see that there is some customer states notes. So this car had an issue with no start. The car's in for a checkup, presumably on its 12-volt battery system. So the labor lines here are starter performance test, charging performance test, battery performance test, and parasitic draw test. Each one of those you're presumably charging some labor for. So when you're thinking about how do I know what I should list in the labor line, you're not going to put, go to the top of the timing cover 10 millimeter bolt and twist to the left. You're not writing that into your service descriptions, right? But if you think about what are the like activities that you would be charging the customer for labor, or that you might presumably assign to a different technician. So if one tech might do the alignment and another tech might do the struts, then you might want to call those out on separate lines. So these are just some rules of thumb to know like what do you segment into labor versus not. And then underneath that, we see the inspection. So these are, again, an opportunity to provide more detail about what these systems actually include. So in this case, what this test includes. So we see inspect the keys, make sure the cylinder is working correctly, check to make sure that the immobilizer warning light is doing what it's supposed to. And then we have both the test for the starter motor draw as well as the result, battery voltage, alternator charging, diode, alternator belt condition. Finally, we see a couple things that have issues. So we have the terminals and the cables, both are of a concern. The battery itself is failing a load test, and the parasitic draw result is okay. So all of those things are included as part of that 12-volt battery system check. On the right-hand side, we see that the issue with the 12-volt battery is that it's got some corrosion and some deposits that are coming out of the positive terminal. And upon testing the battery, as we saw, the battery has failed, so that it needs a new 12-volt battery. So we get an opportunity to sell a 12-volt battery here. And then after replacing the battery, it was discovered that the terminal is also corroded and it needs a replacement terminal. So you do the testing, and as a result of the testing, you now get to sell a 12-volt battery and the terminal repair. So this is an example of system-specific testing. Anyway, comments, questions, holler. Continuing on, here's an example of yet another system-specific type of test. So here we have air conditioning. This is the previous service that you saw was written at my repair shop. This is a service that was written at Connie and Dick's, which is Scott Brown's shop in Claremont, California, and we'll be using his shop to look at some ADAS specific can jobs as well. So thank you very much to Scott for allowing me to share this. So again, kind of taking you through more and more sophisticated examples. So up here at the top, we see the labor operations. In this case, we've got $191. The previous one that I was showing you, 12-volt battery system test, $153. If I'm going to charge you $153 to test the 12-volt battery system, I better show you some stuff that I'm actually doing for that amount of money, right? So I'm justifying the $153. In this case, this is going up even further. We've got $191 to check the AC system. This includes an evacuation and recharge. But we're seeing all the details of what this service would include. Obviously, there's parts, and then we have some more inspections. So in this case, high side's looking okay. The air out of the vents is obviously too warm. And then upon evacuating the system, we see that there wasn't enough refrigerant in the car, hence the low temps. It's interesting, in Scott's case, he also has written in some disclosures, and you'll see some more of these in the ADAS examples. So when you're building these services, if there's something that you want to communicate to the customer as part of that service, this is a great way to do it. And then over here on the right-hand side, again, we're getting to see the results of the inspection. So we see the test results for the gauges, and then what was read out of the vent. So it's not a he said, she said. We can see the photo. This is the actual test result. And then he has attached some readings from his AC machine. So in this case, the customer is getting to see, wow, you have a sophisticated AC machine in your shop as well. And I can see that you've used that tool to diagnose my car, hence getting charged money for the work. So this is an example of a AC system specific diagnostic. I'm going to continue. So what other kinds of system specific testing might you want to write? So we just gave two examples, 12-volt battery, AC system. Other great examples are engine cooling system, drivability tests. So folks are very familiar with sort of level 1, level 2, level 3 kinds of testing. You can write those according to sort of your own shop and style. Wheel alignment's another one. It's very easy to just drop a singular wheel alignment line onto your RO. Don't do that. You're going to charge real money for that wheel alignment. That wheel alignment machine costs you a lot of money. Take the time to write that service to show all of the things that you are going to do as part of that wheel alignment check. You can also write vehicle specific tests. So if there's a particular line that you're working on, you have a set process that you want your technicians to follow for particular DTCs or types of tests, you can write those very specifically. And then, of course, we're going to take a look at some advanced driver assistance systems. ADAS, obviously, super high value and the frontier of where we're going. So ADAS, these are photos also from Scott's shop, Connie and Dick's in Claremont, and also courtesy of Diagnostic Network. So I'll talk a little bit about Diag towards the end and Scott's activities, but very grateful for Scott for sharing some of these things. So to sort of, again, pull back the curtain and see what this stuff looks like, those of you who are already doing some of this stuff in your shop, you know what this looks like. But for everyone who is not currently touching these types of cars, it's awesome to be able to see that this is real, this is coming in, this is what we're dealing with these days. And there's a lot of equipment, a lot of technology surrounding it. So this is a training that Scott did with some educators from Pasadena City College, again, down in Southern California, and showing off some of the new equipment in his shop. This is the Autel machine, and doing some front radar calibrations here with the sensor that he's setting up. Here's some more examples of some targets and alignment readings. Any questions about sort of the equipment that you're seeing in any of this stuff? And actually, I think we have Scott with us. So if you have specific questions about some of these photos, I'm sure he'd be happy to chat about it. Folks familiar with this? Have you seen this stuff before?
I have.
How many folks do you think, hey Jimmy, how many folks in your area do you guys think are doing these types of repairs right now? I mean, obviously, you know, I'm very involved with ASCCA in the California market. ASA is the association up in Pacific Northwest, and folks that are participating in associations tend to be more sophisticated operators, hence the knowledge that I need to be part of an association and supporting that organization. So understanding that this audience is probably a little bit more advanced than sort of the general shop owning public, but how many of you guys are seeing this right now and kind of getting your feet wet? Andy has, but anybody else? Let's take a look at some of the service writing, and then we can also break and come back to some more questions that folks have as we get a little bit further along. Okay, so let's take a look at some real world ADAS calibrations. So I'm going to break out of this and go into some can jobs. So here are some written services for specifically ADAS. So you saw the structure when I had the slides open. These get a little bit more complicated. And so I wanted to show you, kind of show them to you native, like in the wild. So this is an example of a four-wheel alignment service for a car that has ADAS. And again, this is not cheap, almost $250 for this alignment. And you can see how Scott Shop is itemizing what they're including as part of that service. So road test, researching any requirements. This essay is for service advisor. So if there's anything that they're going to have to do after they do the alignment as a result of the alignment results, if there's repairs needed. They're also including an ADAS vehicle inventory. So that is very important. It's very surprising actually to me. I've learned this, is that you can't necessarily know what systems are on board the car just by looking at the year, make, model, or having the VIN. You actually have to connect to the car to know what systems are enabled there, and therefore what you might need to potentially calibrate. So as part of his service, they are doing that inventory to make sure that there's nothing that's being missed. Obviously adjusting tire pressures, they perform the alignment. They're going to inspect to make sure nothing is loose. If there are any calibrations that are required to be done as a part of an alignment as specified by the vehicle manufacturer, they are going to do that. And then they're going to road test the vehicle again. And then again, labor items with inspections, we have a checklist that is associated with some of those operations. So how was the road test? What were the readings, or what was the adjustment that you made on the tire pressure? Making sure the steering and suspension is okay. We're up to spec on alignment. Anything that was post-wheel alignment was performed, and then post-alignment road test also okay. So the technician is going to fill out that checklist, and then after this vehicle is shipped, all that stuff is then captured, recorded as having been done. The checklist is a great way of not only showcasing that it was done, but also recording that the technician did it, which technician did it, at what time did they do it, et cetera. So there's some additional tracking that's going on here, all of which could be very, very handy, both to show value, but in case there's any issue that comes back. So when we're talking about ADAS, the big concern is around if their vehicle has an issue down the road. And the safety concerns around these vehicles is really severe. I mean, you're thinking about cars that are effectively making their own decisions about how they're going to go down the road. And so understanding not only what you're supposed to do, but then showcasing in your documentation that you did it before you let that vehicle go is absolutely critical. So this is a wheel alignment. Now, as we go into the calibration services, you're going to see some consistency between these. So you'll get to see some repeated line items. But at the very least, you can start to see, in Scott's case, how he has framed this up. So these are calibrations that not only are they, writing onto the service, obviously, to show what they did, but also, get paid for it. These are the same services that are getting presented to insurance adjusters when there's an issue that's covered based on whatever coverage you have. And one of the stories that Scott likes to tell is that he was showing this to an adjuster in his shop, and the adjuster said, my goodness, are you actually doing all of these things? And Scott said, yeah, we do this on every single one of these that we perform. And he was like, oh, wow, that's quite a lot. And this is a guy that presumably does this every day. He does it several times a day, and he himself didn't even know that these were all the things that these services include. So, we're really our own worst enemy if we are not taking the time to describe this stuff to the people that we are selling to, because they do not appreciate the work that we're actually doing. And it's something that we take for granted. So in this case, he's starting out with a disclaimer. So this is an example. Tracy, if there's anything you want to add, just speak up. So a disclaimer up here at the top: advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS, aid the driver in reducing certain driving workloads. The driver is ultimately responsible for the safe operation of their vehicle. Review the owner's manual before using these systems. So a little CYA up here at the top. And then these are the things that Connie and Dix is doing with every single repair when they're touching an ADAS calibration. So capturing the service reason, doing a systems inventory, checking for recalls or bulletins, road testing beforehand if possible, doing a pre-scan, doing a wheel alignment audit. So checking the wheel alignment, not necessarily making a adjustment to the alignment, but certainly capturing what the alignment is at the time of the calibration. If there are requirements that are needed in order to get the car into alignment, they are capturing them then. They are performing the calibration and doing a road test after the calibration is performed, and then doing a post scan. So after all that is done, making sure you've got clean bill of health diagnostic wise, all of this being added to the repair order. And speaking to Scott about this, some of this stuff is built in right now. So in the Autel system, they are doing some alignment checks. Scott, I don't know if you're able to chime in here and would like to share some of that, but you go ahead.
Sure. And lunch and learn, I just had a mouthful of food, so thank you.
Perfect timing. Sorry.
Yeah. So this is the alignment audit is a lot of this stuff is really a gigantic PITA, right? But Autel is pretty, they're pretty forward thinking, and they're looking at, increasing the efficiencies in the shop. And they've now added a camera kit that you can put on this frame, and it streamlines that whole process, because before we would just roll it up on our alignment rack, do the alignment audit, and then pull it off and then perform the ADAS stuff. So it's pretty interesting, and you're able to do that right on a flat stall. You don't have to have it in an alignment bay, but it needs to be level. But yeah, this is some interesting stuff that you're covering here.
Thanks, Scott.
This is Andy. I'm sorry. Do you happen to know how long it's taken you or your technicians to do that new camera setup? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we used it for the first time just a couple weeks ago during that class, the picture she was showing earlier. And boy, walking through it for the first time, I think it took us roughly 30 to 35 minutes to set up and do, with us not knowing how to do it. But I can tell you that we could probably do it in about 15 minutes now. It's pretty slick.
Perfect. I was just curious because right now, sorry to chime in and interrupt, 10 minutes is about the average we're hearing from the techs that are using this, sometimes even on the first try. So I was just curious. We're trying to ballpark where everybody's at. Just in case, I represent Autel on the ADAS side. So it is our specific concern to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support the shops and making sure that we make it as easy as possible and as profitable as possible for you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just curious, and I thought it was nice for everybody here too, because I'm sure everybody thinks there's probably more involved into that than what it really is.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Andy. Thanks, Scott. So in this case, not only are you wielding some pretty sophisticated technology in the course of getting this thing set up, obviously streamlining the setup process, but using that equipment is, part of the value that you're performing for that customer. So not just the time, but the vehicle, the equipment that you are leveraging to get that work done. Again, showcasing what you're going to do with that equipment. I'll show you some examples of some test results here in a second. But all that coming together, I was talking about the labor operations up here. Down here, we have what Scott's written for his checklist. So again, some of this is quality control. confirming that it was done. So some repeated from the labor lines to the inspections, but that opportunity is to check off and make sure it did get done, not just charging for it, as well as photo and screenshot for documentation purposes. Return to service, this is what I wanted to call out in particular. So this last checklist item is very important. So return to service found that all systems are operating as defined in the operator manual at this time. So these are all very deliberate words that Scott is choosing here. So return to service is the decision is that this car can be released and that all systems are operating as defined. So not necessarily that they're what the vehicle owner's perspective might be on how they're supposed to work. They are working as defined not only just in general, but also in the operator manual and saying at this moment, at this time, not that something can't go wrong later, but at this time that has all been checked and that is being proactively recorded as part of this service. So this is for blind spot monitoring. You see that the blind spot system in particular is being called up here at the top. And then he's got some of the other inventory of the system. So advanced cruise control, braking, blind spot, lane keep assist, and you see some of that repeated in these other ones. So here's an example of adaptive cruise control. Sorry, excuse me, not advanced, adaptive. Adaptive cruise control with an alignment audit. So again, very similar. So this is calling out the radar calibration versus the blind spot monitoring calibration. Very similar inspection results or inspection items. Here is an example of lane keep assist. So in these cases, you're starting to see sort of how is this being framed up and how is this being presented to the customer. And you're welcome to borrow these, adapt these, do these however you wish. Again, my thanks to Scott for allowing me to share this. And in this fourth example, you're seeing this is the same price. This is 412 and 412 here. This previous one is even more expensive at 502. These are not cheap systems, cheap services. And you're going to be putting this up in front of a insurance adjuster. You want to get paid. You don't want to have an argument over whether or not this service is necessary or is sophisticated and therefore pricey. Put that into your services, put that in front of the adjuster and say, oh, I'm sorry, did you want to skip something here? Did you want me to not do this thing as part of this service? Okay, I didn't think so, because this is what we need to do in order to make sure this car is safe. So this is an example of how this comes together. So this is a specific repair order. So this is a sublet that was brought in to Connie and Dick's from another shop down in Southern California. And this is a fairly contemporary vehicle, 2018 Nissan Sentra. And now you see what was done to the vehicle. So the car was initially brought in with a performance analysis. So again, talking about vocabulary, Scott likes to use the term analysis. So it doesn't matter if you like analysis or diagnostic or testing or whatever the words you like to use, whatever's your style. You just got to make sure you can stand behind it and you believe in it. This is what he's writing. So in this case, we've got an electrical performance diagnosis. So query, additional research and test plan. And then we see the inspection items that he specifically wants to make sure his technicians are gathering. This car has a radar stain code. And then the results of the inspection here. Over here on the right-hand side, you see the technical details. So this is the stuff that the technician has added to this repair order based on their testing. So we see customer states up here at the top, vehicles in an impact that damaged the suspension in the right front. They performed the mechanical repairs and also had the body damage repaired. While at the body shop, Tatsu was informed that the front camera is inoperable. They would like to bring the vehicle here for an analysis and replacement with calibration if needed. So this is customer states notes presented separately from the work that you are charging the customer for. Then you see the details. So this is all of that test data that is being captured. Now, Scott, of course, is, sort of the premier diagnostic shop. So he's putting together a case study here. You don't necessarily have to be, notating on your captures. If you want to just take photos of the equipment that's in your shop or whatever, you can do that. But you at least see that this is how this is getting added to the ticket. And this is, a Console 3 Plus. This is a very expensive scan tool. This is getting added and showcased inside of this repair order to understand why this diagnostic service, in this case, the electrical analysis, was $189. radar stain code, some freeze frame. Happy to go into some more detail about this stuff. And of course, you know, Scott's the expert. This is a car that he fixed inside of his shop. So these are actually his notes. He's added some details in terms of where that sensor is located so that presumably the customer or the insurance adjuster can see what we're talking about. All that stuff's been added. In this case, we've got an adjuster coming out. So this car, as a result of this, needs to have a calibration and it needs to have a sensor replaced. So you see the calibration done here. Again, this is his CAN job for the radar calibration. And I believe, Scott, you've now changed from FEV to the adaptive cruise control language. So you've changed the way you're presenting it now without the same.
Right, and those CAN jobs, of course, those are very verbose, and we pull those up so that they have all the language and we can edit right on the fly. Right, as we're building it, we go, okay, this one doesn't need this and it doesn't need that, and then we can go ahead and assemble the job. So that's why some of them may have more data than you would typically need. But like in this case here, this doesn't actually have adaptive cruise. It's a forward emergency braking. Mm-hmm. So we just basically edited that front line there.
Mm-hmm. So this calibration is commanding $337 at Scott's shop. Here is the front distance sensor. So this sensor comes from Nissan for $835 and has some labor associated to put it on. And then this car also got some gas, but we can run through these notes on the right-hand side. Adjuster came out, adjuster approved the repairs, capturing the final road test. And then as a result of doing the post-scan, there were still some tire pressure monitoring issues that were added here so that we know that those weren't addressed as part of the service, et cetera. So, you know, this is all added here and displayed in this case to the adjuster so that the adjuster will approve the work to the tune of, in this case, the customer paid for the gas, but the adjuster paid the, you know, $1,900 for all these repairs. So this is how you can present value not only to your customer, but also to these third parties that are ultimately going to be paying on behalf of the customer. Thanks again, Scott, for letting me share all this.
You're welcome.
So if anyone has any questions about this ticket, otherwise I'm going to keep rolling. All right, so getting back. Again, we're talking about service writing here. Everyone should feel like they can speak, not necessarily, you don't have to be Connie and Dick's, you don't have to be Luscious Garage. You're going to have your own style for how you want to communicate this stuff. And you can talk about it however you choose. So we don't need to have a debate about whether or not you call it tests or diagnosis or analysis or calibration or inspection or maintenance. All these different words are perfectly legitimate. However you want to present value to your customer is how you should present value to your customer, acknowledging that there are different kinds of words that you can use for this. So a lot of folks are a little shy. They don't like, oh, I don't want to burden the customer. I don't want to put too much in front of them. I don't want to overwhelm them. I'll talk about overwhelm in just a second. Don't do that. Don't apologize for the complexity of the customer's car. You are here to help them fix a very complicated vehicle that they chose to purchase and drive. And so make sure that you are able to communicate in a way that essentially reflects that level of sophistication that you're performing on the car. Whatever you're doing at your shop, you're the expert, you know what you're performing. Go ahead and communicate whatever you're doing and however you want to do it on those tickets. While we're talking about inspections and maintenance, I wanted to call out that when we're talking about opportunities to, again, communicate what you did as part of your repairs, it doesn't have to just be inspections. It doesn't have to just be DVIs. We're very familiar with DVIs. They're very popular. They're popular for a lot of these same reasons, right? Is that you have an opportunity to show value to the customer and show all of the details of what you found. But that's only up front. That's only upon intake. You don't want to limit yourself in terms of being able to showcase that value throughout the course of the repair. So it's not just maintenance. It's not just initial inspection. It's also diagnosis and it's also repairs. And when we're talking about checklists, the purposes of checklists are twofold. One is to show value to the customer, right? To show them that attention to detail. and also for quality control. So you see in these CAN jobs that I was showing you with the ADAS calibrations, et cetera, there are details that are listed so that in the, like the story of the adjuster coming in and going, oh my God, you do all this? They can see all that value, but also that you're checking to make sure that the technician did it and checked it off and said yes and can be held accountable. The one thing I always like to add though is that do not think that the checklist is fixing the car. Do not have the technician work for the checklist. The checklist needs to work for the technician. And so there's a lot of like over sophistication or over detail where we're expecting technicians to basically walk around the car and check each of these things off. That is slowing your technicians down, just like Andy was saying around timing to get that thing set up. You want to like be able to roll through that checklist very, very quickly and just get the information on the ticket in front of that customer. So don't forget that technicians are professionals who know how to fix cars. If you've got a technician that doesn't know how to fix cars, then you don't have the right technician. Getting back to this too much comment. So obviously I'm here telling you, you need to showcase value. Here are examples of very sophisticated systems. What is too much? I read a book by Atul Gawande, Being Mortal. I highly recommend this book. This book is not about fixing cars. This is about being a human being and also having to live with other human beings that get old and eventually die. And if you're a human being, I highly recommend reading this book. So your book suggestion of the day. But one of the things that Dr. Gawande talks about in this book is a story that he experienced with his father. Both of them are doctors. So his father is a doctor and he himself is a doctor. And they describe the story of going to another doctor to discuss his father's cancer diagnosis. And in that visit, the doctor is going on and on and on about all this different cancer treatments and drugs and et cetera, et cetera. And both the author of the book and his father were like unable to follow what all of this information was that was getting plowed onto them, presumably so that they could make the decision about what they should do with his father's cancer. And, they were thinking, what he describes in the book is, man, if I'm a doctor and I can't keep up with what this guy is saying, like, how does someone who is not a doctor or doesn't have like another doctor with them understand this? Like, this is total overwhelm. And he described it as kind of a shift inside of the medical community, whereas before the culture was like sort of this doctor knows best, right? It was like kind of similar to like, hey, little lady, just drop off your keys and we'll tell you what the car needs, go away. So you used to go to the doctor and they would say, okay, this is what you need to do and you don't need to know anything else about it. There's been this shift now where it's like the doctors want you to make the decision. And so they're just giving you all this information and you're supposed to like intake all of this and make your own conclusion. The problem is that you're not an expert. So you don't know what you should do. And the reason why you're paying this other person is because they do know something about this, which is what he suggests as this third line, which is being doctor interpretive. Your job is to be an interpreter. So not only are you able to show the customer what you are doing on the car, but also interpret it for them, which is, this is what I recommend that you do. So when you're thinking about how to do this, your goal in all cases should just be that interpreter. You are that liaison that's trying to essentially communicate between these two isolated parties, right? So doctor interpretive is where you find your common ground. And however you choose to interpret, how you choose to essentially message to your customer, that's part of your special sauce. Each one of us is a successful business owner because we know how to present information to our customers in a way that delights them and makes them want to come back. You can just inform that into your service writing. If you're looking for more information about ADAS, I highly recommend Diagnostic Network. Please go to diag.net, sign up, participate. Here's an example of the autonomous vehicles community room discussing all sorts of cool stuff. So lots more going on there. Great, vibrant community, great place to learn. Again, my thanks to Scott Brown, not only for letting me use some of his well-earned intellectual property in terms of how to present service to his customers for some of these top-notch diagnostics, et cetera, but also for everything that he's done for the industry. An incredible contributor. Grateful to have him as a friend. So go to Diagnostic Network, sign up, participate. My thanks again for having me here for this Lunch and Learn.
Thanks, Carolyn.
I have one more slide, Jeff, before you
Okay.
jump in,
Yeah.
which is now good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm thrilled to be here and have a chance to support ASA Northwest, but I wanted to let you know that I discovered last Friday that my partner is actually matched at University of Washington medical residency. So I'm going to be moving to Seattle in the next coming months. So I will get to see you guys a lot more. So not only thank you for having me, but I look forward to seeing you all soon. And I will be continuing to support ASCCA, but I look forward to also being able to support ASA Northwest with a little bit more proximity.
That's awesome.
That's exciting.
We're looking forward to that. Well, thank you
Thanks
so
again
much.
for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on. Thank you everyone for being on. And don't forget, in the next couple of weeks, we have another Lunch and Learn with Gary Smith, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
And
very
also,
much.
thank you, Scott, Mr. Brown there.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Awesome presentation.
Good job, Carolyn.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Bye,
You'll have to
Micah.
stop-
Tracy.
you'll have to stop by when you move up
I
here.
know. I was going to tell you at the beginning, but I wanted to save the surprise.
Okay.
Whereabouts are you going to be living?
I don't know. We're going to fly up in a couple of weeks, and
Bainbridge Island.
okay. All right. Noted. Noted.
You check it out.
All
Hey, Pete.
recommendations welcome.
Yes.
Hey, Pete, go back to work on your Apex, okay?
I will. And a good strong exit out of the apex.
Yeah, step on a little earlier, okay? I've been looking at your data. You're a little slow.
I got some, yeah, I am a little bit slow. I need to pick up about 2 seconds right now.
Right. All
Thanks,
right.
Scott. We'll go over some
Thank you, guys.
graphs later.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you guys. Thank you, everybody, for putting this on.
You should, Carolyn, you should swing by Bainbridge. You'd probably like it a lot. At least visit it.
I will definitely, and I'll let you know when I'm up there.
Okay.